What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, January 29th, 2018. End of the month here, coming up on the State of the Union speech. A lot of stuff going on today. And, of course, on the 31st, there's that eclipse, supermoon, blue moon, and total eclipse. And should be able to see it from the western part of the U.S., and, of course, it's going to be right above overhead for us here in Hawaii. All right, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, and I'm still working on the server, still trying to get some stuff. Okay, yes, the link is actually visible there on the main page if you want to plug into the YouTube video, and that's now streaming. And so bit by bit, we're getting all of this stuff actually working. Okay. Let's get into the news here right now. First of all, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Now, on Thursday, as our third hour guest, we're going to have Greg Felton. He's an author. He's got a new book out. You probably have seen the ad for it at whatreallyhappened.com, and he's going to be spending some time with us on Thursday, in the third hour. And yes, this Friday in the third hour, the Lady Claire returns to radio. She's actually doing a lot better just in the last few days. And I'm taking her to the chiropractor again this afternoon, but it does look like this is not going to be permanent, and we're just so happy that she's doing well. Okay, getting into the news here. A lot of stuff going on, as I said before. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is stepping down, effective today. And it was interesting. He had indicated he wanted to retire this coming March, and he was staying on to be able to qualify for the higher pension or something along that line. But according to sources, he was forced to resign, and it may have something to do with that FISA memo. And apparently the House committee is going to vote on that very issue today, whether it's coming on out or whether it's going to remain hidden. They're going to schedule the vote at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So that's going to happen actually just in another hour. So we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, of course, Robert Mueller is trying to find some way that he can hit Donald Trump with an obstruction of justice charge before the memo gets released. It's a race to try and inflict the most damage. But according to Ron DeSantis, after the FISA memo is released, there will be a call for a special counsel to be appointed to look at what's in there. And this is the way it's supposed to happen. You have Congress investigates, and then when they found evidence of something, then they appoint a special counsel. Rod Rosenstein simply tapped Robert Mueller and said, "Sick the president." And remember, Mueller was supposed to be about this Russian collusion, have found no evidence of it at all. And still the corporate media is pushing Russia collusion, Donald Trump colluding with Russia. And the real collusion, of course, is Uranium One. And Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and the Clinton Foundation and all these other people who were part of this process of transferring control of 20% of our nation's uranium ore into Russian hands. And that includes some of the people sitting on Robert Mueller's team. Now, on Friday, we mentioned that the Department of Justice had confirmed that they had all of the missing text messages between FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI attorney Lisa Page. Interestingly enough, they've got them all. They're not turning all of them over. So far, the Department of Justice has submitted a mere 7,000 of the text to congressional investigators. That's just 14% of the total of 50,000 texts. Now, are they trying to pre-filter, be selective, or is something being hidden? And I would tend to say it's probably the latter, because apparently Andrew McCabe's texts can't be found. Now the FBI is saying they can't find Deputy Director Andrew McCabe's text messages from the period of time when they were investigating Hillary Clinton's email server and the Mueller investigation got started. Oh, those poor people over at the FBI, they just keep losing stuff. It must be amazing. Maybe they ought to get one of those little beeper things you put on your key ring. When you lose your keys, you clap it and it makes a noise. Get one of those for every one of those missing file cabinets here. Now, Tom Fitton is out there. He's got another video from Judicial Watch, and he's saying there is certainly enough evidence to arrest Hillary Clinton right now. And he's talking specifically about her Title 18 felony violations, which should have been prosecuted. And there is more than enough evidence that she was mishandling classified information. According to Fitton, the evidence is overwhelming. Plus, there's the decades worth of criminal corruption to look back on. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So basically, Tom Fitton is focusing in on Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin and the classified information found on Anthony Weiner's laptop. And apparently, Weiner's wife and Hillary aide Huma Abedin transmitted classified information and passwords on her Yahoo email accounts. Now, there are 2,800 government emails on Weiner's laptop, which the State Department is slowly releasing to the public, and more of those emails will be released this Friday. And Fitton is saying the Justice Department needs to launch a serious investigation and prosecute Hillary and Huma. And Tom Fitton described former FBI Director James Comey's investigation into Hillary Clinton a sham. And that's exactly what it was. It was a total, complete sham. They had made the decision that she was going to be let off the hook before they even completed the investigation, before they even interviewed her. And they didn't bother putting her under oath when they interviewed her. This was a whitewash. And it's all about protecting that drug money, that drug cartel that's at the heart of this web of corruption. That's where they all meet. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, providing security for the CIA's gun and drug running out of Arkansas in the 1980s. Then you've got Loretta Lynch, who prior to being the Attorney General was the U.S. Attorney for New York. And when they found out HSBC was laundering drug money, HSBC got a wrist slap. And who was on HSBC's board of directors when all of this criminality was going on? James Comey. That's where it all overlaps, the drug corruption. All right, so let's talk about the war zones because there is a lot of stuff going on over there. Apparently, Turkish forces have captured a key mountain in Afrin, and apparently using their advantage over the Kurdish YPJ forces, and captured Bursaya Mount, Kastel Jundu, and Yizabak. And additionally, the TAF and the TFSA entered the area of Kavir Care Mountain, where intense fighting was being reported. So they're still mixing it up over there. And Erdogan is now saying this offensive may get wider because he is going to basically attack wherever there are terrorists. Now, that means the Kurdish groups. And the real danger here, of course, is that Erdogan is saying that any American forces that are blended in with those Kurds are legitimate targets. And he's basically said, you Americans, it's time for you to leave Syria. The U.S. government is coming on back saying, no, we are here in Syria to stay. And so this is leading up to a confrontation between two NATO allies. But the U.S. basically lost this one. They've lost Syria. They don't want to admit it. That's why they're still in there. But it just fell apart. They've abandoned the Kurds, and Turkey's just coming on in and cleaning up the mess. Now, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, I guess he's getting very tired of Israel's habit flying warplanes over Lebanon, and from that position firing missiles at Damascus. And so Assad has now issued an ultimatum saying that the next time Israel attacks Syria, he will launch Scud missiles at Ben Gurion Airport. And that is a serious, serious threat. If Israel were to attack again and Assad were to fire those Scud missiles, who knows what Israel might do? They might decide to say, surprise, we really do have nuclear weapons. Or it might give the United States yet another excuse. Oh, we must go into Syria and help our dear friend Israel. It's just wars all over the place. Not looking very peaceful out there. A little bit of a whoopsie up in Iraq. Yes, we're still in Iraq. Apparently, U.S. forces operating in Iraq accidentally struck an official Iraqi delegation, leaving 7 people dead. This is being reported in Russian media. And apparently, the U.S. military was conducting an operation to capture terrorists when the crew of a combat helicopter saw a group of people, some of whom were armed, and they simply uncorked on them. And it turned out to be this official Iraq delegation. They killed 7 people. Now, pardon me, down in Yemen, apparently, the prime minister, is calling clashes organized by the southern movement in Aden a coup against the government. It's a coup attempt. They're trying to basically regime change the government. And apparently these southern protesters accuse Prime Minister Ahmed bin Dagher and his ministers of corruption, thus urging Hadi to fire them and form a new government. So still in there trying to get the regime change done here. Now, this is a big stink that's come on up, and I think it illustrates quite a bit about Israel's mindset. And apparently over in Poland, their government decided that the blame for the Nazi atrocities should go where it deserves to go, with the Nazis, at least for what we've all been told that they were doing. And so they literally passed a law making it a crime to talk about Polish labor camps or Polish this or Polish that, because the Poles didn't do anything. It was the occupying forces of Germany. Well, doesn't sound like that big a deal, but Israel's they're just up in arms. You know, their attitude is, well, Poland didn't do enough to fight off the Nazis, and therefore you all share the guilt, followed by a handout for more money. And so Israel's making a big deal about this. They want everybody in the world to feel guilty about the Holocaust. Not just the Germans, everybody. Just milk it for all that it's worth. And apparently, Israeli opposition leader Isaac Herzog is basically asking Prime Minister Netanyahu to recall the country's ambassador to Poland, Anna Azari. And basically all Poland wanted to say is, you can't impose the blame upon Poles for things committed by Nazi Germany. And Israel's out there saying, yes, we can. Yes, we can. We'll blame anybody we want. Okay. Getting on over to, okay. Somebody apparently is saying there's still a problem with the YouTube camera feed. All right. Getting on over to North Korea, the U.S. has clamped more sanctions on North Korea. They absolutely do not want the two Koreas reunifying. And apparently the corporate media in South Korea has been ridiculing the entire idea to the point where North Korea is saying, you know, we're ready to call this off. And what they had planned to do, in addition to sending a unified team to the Olympics, they wanted to have events in North Korea, because North Korea's got a lot of ski slopes, and they were thinking about trying to get one or two of the Olympic events back up to North Korea. and they were going to do all this together. Now there's been a big monkey wrench jammed into that. See, 6 years ago, the Koreas almost reunified, and the same thing happened. The U.S. just went on in there and mucked it up here. Now, U.S. Marine Corps Commander General Robert Neller said last Thursday in Washington, D.C., that the U.S. military must be psychologically prepared for a war with North Korea. He's saying they got to be psyched up for it. And he's saying it will be a very, very kinetic, physical, violent fight over some really, really tough ground, and everybody is going to have to be mentally prepared. This is in an interview with CNN. Well, anybody who's studied the history of the start of the Korean War understands how rough it was and how many people died. It was a terrible, terrible, drawn-out war, and it never officially ended. They signed a truce, and that was basically it. But here we have the U.S. getting ready to go on in and start it all over again. Okay. See, the problem is while I'm doing the radio show, I can't debug the video, but apparently it's back to buffering again today. And I'm not seeing it at this end. Now, U.S. Defense Secretary Mattis is signaling a harder line in the South China Sea. We're making stink face at China, looming trade war, and apparently Mattis is approaching Indonesia and Vietnam to be allies against the new China. And these countries view China as a strategic competitor. Vietnam. Seems I've heard that before. Weren't they the enemy a while back? It's amazing how everybody keeps switching sides. Now, we've been talking about U.S. weapons and their shortcomings. And apparently, the U.S. Navy has an issue with the Zumwalt stealth destroyer. Costs $440 million per ship. They've got one of them that's probably going to have to spend the rest of the winter frozen to a dock in Canada. But the issue is the artillery that the Zumwalts are equipped with is called the Advanced Gun System. It is a 155 millimeter diameter cannon that can shoot smart shells. They're guided by GPS. These guns have a range of up to 60 miles. And each Zumwalt class ship has two of these very large pieces of artillery. There's only one problem. Apparently, these smart shells go for $1 million each, and right now the Navy doesn't have any. Good planning. Very, very, very good planning here. Now, here's another scandal for people to look at, along with all the other problems with the weapons. Apparently, the Pentagon was forced last year to rescind interim security clearances granted under the Obama administration to at least 165 contractors with criminal records, including felony convictions for pedophilia and foreign government affiliations. Apparently, the vetting process was, they just shrugged and they let these people in. So 165 contractors. Amazing here. Article that came on out of Journal Neo. Actually, I'm going to take a break here for commercials, and when we come on back, we'll start with this article. So stay tuned. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I think we've probably reached the point where we can definitely say we're in a world war, because it's everywhere. It's all over the place here. And apparently, at the beginning of last year, the chief of U.S. Special Operations Command, General Raymond Thomas, was speaking in front of one of the Senate committees, And he basically made the statement, we operate and fight in every corner of the world. Rather than a mere break glass in case of war force, we are now proactively engaged across the battle space of the geographic combatant commands, providing key integrating and enabling capabilities to support their campaigns and operations. Now, apparently, according to the director of the Arms and Security Project at the Center for International Policy, right now, U.S. Special Operations Forces have been deployed to 3/4 of all the nations on this planet. U.S. Special Forces are operating in 75% of the nations on planet Earth. So, all right, let's talk about the economic news here. Article coming out of Zero Hedge. It just gets worse and worse. Apparently, a record 32% of used car trade-ins are underwater. And what that basically means is, because the market is very bad right now, and it's driving prices down, that car owners, when they trade in their car, it's worth less than the outstanding remainder of the car loan that they have on it. But apparently the lending companies are so desperate to get new loans out those front doors, they're willing to eat that difference. Because that's what this is all about. It's not about getting you a car. It's about getting you back into debt to the banks. They hate it when you pay cash. They hate it when you pay cash. Now, there's apparently an issue over with Bitcoin, and apparently it involves an entity called Tether, and it's owned by a trading company named Bitfinex, which has recently come under scrutiny by a blogger who identifies themselves as Bitfinex D. And apparently this user in the blogging posts, tweets, videos, basically saying that Tether has been plucked from thin air to boost the value of Bitcoin. And investor worries have stemmed from the fact that Bitfinex has previously declared that all of its coins are backed by real U.S. dollar deposits, giving it a 1-to-1 value, which sounds like a really good idea. But apparently there's been a series of blog posts from Bitfinex D that suggest that the value has been artificially bumped up. It's inflated. It's overvalued. And that could lead to a crash, a correction. I told you I was smelling tulips. Now, apparently over in Germany, talks between unions and manufacturers failed to reach an accord. The country's largest trade union has announced a series of rolling 24-hour strikes expected to slow production amid an upsurge in the economy. Okay. Another little article here. China and the United States are heading toward a trade war, and that is going to mean hardship for ordinary Americans. We're not going to be getting those inexpensive things in the big box stores. And in the long run, it might be good. Might see manufacturing come back to the U.S. But economic wars have a very bad habit of turning into real wars. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. We're going to start, and Kevin in West Virginia, I'm probably going to have to take you over the commercial break, but let's get started. What's on your mind?
Hey, sir, how are you today?
Doing fine.
All right, my first couple questions that I wanted to ask you was about North and South Korea and the unification for the Olympics. I thought that was going to happen, but I just recently read an article that they're not going to march under one flag, and I was wondering which report was the correct report.
I think probably the one that they're not going to march under the same flag, because somebody somewhere is really trying to keep this reunification from happening.
You don't think it's the West, do you?
I don't think it's who?
The West, like the United States?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I'm sure that, the American intelligence agencies have called in every single chip they have among North and South Korea's leadership. Certainly somebody, handed down the instruction for the South Korean media, to basically attack the idea. So it's outside interference, because the United States doesn't want to see, anybody reunified. They were even initially opposed to German reunification, until the German people just knocked down that wall and said it's a done deal. Okay, Kevin, we're going to take a break for commercials. Do not hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Kevin in West Virginia. And Kevin, just pick up where you left off.
Yeah, it's a shame that the Koreas are not going to unify, to come together even on a sporting contest, like the Olympics. I would have loved to have seen that happen.
I agree. But, there's still time. They may pull this thing out. They're at least still talking with each other. And, North Korea is saying, there's nothing bad about what the South Korean diplomats are saying. It's North Korea just reacted to the South Korea's media, where somebody has handed down the instruction to just attack this idea. I guess Kim Jong-un now knows how Donald Trump feels.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I wanted to get at was this FISA and Nunes memo, kind of together. I kind of feel like Trump ought to just read the memo, during the State of the Union address. I think that would be a great idea. Just go ahead and do it.
Well, I think a lot of us are getting kind of tired of waiting to find out what all the fuss is about. But Donald Trump is trying to let the machinery of the Department of Justice work its way properly, because apparently Robert Mueller's new goal is to somehow find something that Trump has done that can be twisted to represent obstruction of justice in the Russian collusion investigation, which is going to be a hard sell because there was never anything in the Trump-Russia collusion case. There was no evidence. That's why Mueller is now on this obstruction witch hunt, and apparently he's now is claiming that Trump wanted to fire him because Mueller was getting close to finding the dirt on Trump-Russia collusion, which he wasn't, but that's what he was going to try and do.
The two important questions that I think everybody need to be asking, the two questions are, what did Obama know and when did he know it? And I think they're the questions that need to be being asked.
Well, there's one thing that we now know for sure, and that is, you remember when the email scandal first broke and Obama got up there on TV and said, I had no idea Hillary was doing this. I had no idea this was going on. I found out about it same as you did on the news last night. Turns out he was lying, because apparently emails have surfaced where Barack Obama was in fact sending classified information to Hillary Clinton using her private email server. So for all the Title 18 violations that Hillary's committed, Obama's right in there as well. And so I think that's the reason, that's where the order to the Department of Justice and the FBI to not let this go anywhere originated.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just think, instead of pointing the, Russian collusion thing, we need to be looking at, what our former president was doing. Like you just said, every Title 18 violation, Hillary done, Obama's tied up with it. I totally agree with that. I mean, why else would Obama be lawyering up like he did over the weekend or Friday or Thursday, one of those days?
They're all starting to lawyer up here, because setting Title 18 aside, the real issue, and that's why it gets back to the FISA memo, is that Obama used the intelligence agencies of the United States government to spy on a political opponent. And that's why I'm saying this is now the Democrats' version of Watergate. And that's what's going to be coming on out here.
Yes, sir. Well, that's all I have for you. I hope, like everybody else sees, why I'm asking the two questions. What did Obama know and when did he know it? I think they're important to this FISA memo. And I hope Trey Gowdy or somebody's asking those type of questions. And I wish they would put Obama under oath in front of the congressional people. You know, I would love to see that, but you know, that's like, you know, never will happen. But I would love to see that.
Me too.
But you have a good day, sir, and Miss Claire's doing better.
Yes, she is, and still taking care of her, but she's actually doing a lot better now. Thank you for the phone call, Kevin. We're going to let you go and switch over to George in Texas. Aloha, George. Welcome back to the show. What is on your mind?
You know, the thing is about this national ID card. You know, just like the real ID card, it went on writing on a bill without any debate on the House or Senate floor separately. And I am just getting sick and tired, and I'm going to call my representative tomorrow and just say, you want these national ID or the real ID because you don't want to enforce the law. So instead of enforcing the law, you punish the American people by attacking their privacy and their freedom. I don't want no national ID card. You know, it's just.
Well, I'm in agreement. I mean, if you think about our society, how many IDs we already need. And carry around, except of course for voting, no ID is required to vote, which is a little bizarre. But again, it's just another ID card. It's not really going to solve, any problems because the new ID will be just as sloppily enforced as the current ones are.
You know, I'm thinking I want to go after like E-Verify. If anybody, who's an over-the-road trucker, 48 states or 50, whatever, you know, there's a system called the DAX system. Every driver has to do it to get, you know, it's like a credit report for truck drivers. And that system is so ripe for abuse. You know how many trucking companies put bad marks on somebody's record that never happened? Like a company like JB Hunt, since you're put on person go into orientation and quit during orientation, somebody in JB Hunt will put that they abandoned their load at a truck stop somewhere across the country when they didn't even step inside a truck. And the thing is, E-Verify, it could be used to just like DAX, it could blackball somebody from ever getting a job. So I'm very much opposed to it. So, and you know, the thing is, I don't need the seal of approval to get a job from the government. That's between the applicant and the employer. You don't need the government seal of approval.
Well, the reason they came out with Real ID was back at a time when there was concern being expressed about illegal immigrants taking jobs away from legal American citizens. But at this point, with the Democrats out there saying that no, we demand amnesty, the underlying purpose to have that Real ID is now moot, and it's not going to do anything. It's just going to be a huge expense and a lot of trouble for everybody. But what's the point of verifying our ID if ID is no longer needed to vote?
Well, you know, one thing we should call into the White House comment line. You know what it is, too? I know somebody. He got audited by the IRS because 10 illegal aliens were using his Social Security number. And I like to call into the White House comment line saying, go after the illegal aliens using his number and leave the guy alone. Because it's not his fault.
No, it isn't. There's a huge amount of fraud with Social Security numbers.
And the thing is, for any illegal alien using somebody else's Social Security number, boom, deport them right away, never to re-enter the country or ever apply again. And you don't get any of that money from the Social Security Trust Fund. I mean, that's my take. Deport them.
Well, I'm in agreement with you. I mean, these illegal immigrants and the refugees are flooding into the United States. They're flooding into Europe. And the vast majority of them have been lured there by promises of all kinds of free stuff. And so that's what they're there for. They're not setting up businesses. They're not starting a store. Basically, they're there to be cared for and vote Democratic.
Well, and you know, the thing is, it really makes me angry is some of these refugees from Africa who are coming with these communicable diseases. They're instantly getting Social Security disability benefits. How many instances have you seen an American citizen who is actually disabled have to pull teeth to get disability from Social Security?
Oh, look at all the wounded veterans, the permanently disabled veterans, how much trouble they have. And yeah, we're living in a country where the politicians view the illegals and refugees as a higher priority than regular citizens. And that is really kind of messed up. That's not a government that's really paying attention to where its priorities need to be.
Well, and the thing is, this is why I'm sitting there calling on all Americans. Next election, we better be at every precinct in this country watching the election like a hawk, so they don't try to steal an election. Because a lot of the problems we have in this country is because we got a bunch of people in office that are there illegitimately because they stolen an election, and
yes,
we cannot allow that
absolutely.
to happen. Well, thank you,
I'm
Mike.
very disappointed. I'm very disappointed in Donald Trump that he's just disbanded his Election Integrity Commission and just said, we'll let the Department of Homeland Security look at this. He's going to lose the Congress this November unless there are major dramatic changes to the way we run our elections. And again, if you go to the main page at whatreallyhappened.com, right up at the top, there's my smiling face on the left, and right below it, there's this gray box full of a lot of permanent articles that I think people want to see. And the very first one on the list is how to have honest elections. You need to read it. You need to copy it off. You need to send it everywhere that you can. And I'm not saying that this is a perfect system, but it is going to make stealing elections very, very difficult, and it's going to make it very easy to detect that somebody's trying to steal the elections. And that's the exact opposite of the system we have with these electronic machines, which are designed to facilitate and then conceal massive election fraud.
Well, I think voter fraud should be considered an act of treason. And I wouldn't mind seeing a few people hang in the public square who try to steal an election. Just to let
I would
people
agree.
think twice.
I would agree. I mean, I don't know about hanging in the public square, but I think any candidate caught engaging in election fraud, they're banned from public life from that point forward.
Yes,
they're never allowed. They're forbidden from ever running for public office ever again.
And the persons who will conspire be forbidden to vote and participate in any political process.
Absolutely,
You know.
absolutely. You got to give these laws teeth. As long as these politicians are getting wrist slaps, as long as they can dump the blame and the punishment on some convenient underling, the problem is not going to be resolved.
Like I say, we have to start, and I think next election, if there is election theft, I mean, we got to go into the grand juries when we have proof. I mean, you're right. I mean, we got to convene grand juries. Not citizen grand juries saying this election's been stolen, and we charge these people with treason. That's and we got to put teeth behind it. I mean, but anyway, Mike, thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, thank you for waiting so patiently, and what's on your mind?
Michael, two things, but the first off is to piggyback on what George just said. And were it me, people who are here, I'm talking about adult-aged males especially, but females too, adult age, who are caught coming in more than once and being deported illegals, or are caught illegally voting as illegals, I think we should, Mexico builds the wall, we should put them on chain gangs, have them actually build the wall, and then kick their butts right over the border back into Mexico. That's the first thing. The second thing is, talking about all this stuff with Obama, Michael, you're the one that told me that the one of the articles of impeachment under Nixon was his weaponizing the IRS, which was done at like a small fraction of what Obama did.
Yes.
And so Obama did it really like 100,000 times greater than what Nixon had an article of impeachment drawn up. Obama, all the wars, all the bank bailouts, and nothing to anybody else, indefinite detention without trial, murder of American citizens, appointing Comey, McCabe, Miller, Rosenstein, all these guys that should be in jail, Lynch, Hillary herself,
Yes.
On and on. And, you know, the only reason I can figure out that he appointed Hillary is he wanted to make sure he got his cut of the Clinton Foundation. I'll bet any money that he's in for a cut on that, like Mr. 10% or whatever it is. But at any rate, yeah, this guy's behind it all. He's behind everything. And you know, I told you my wife is black, and her whole family looks upon him as like the black Jesus. But he destroyed the anti-war movement, got us into all these. The guy was a freaking disaster. And yes. I hope he's under the jail. So
yeah. You know, it's kind of amazing to just know that all of this criminality has been going on, and nobody's ever held to account. I know Vincent Foster was murdered, and his body was dumped in Fort Marcy Park to make it look like a suicide, but it wasn't. There are too many inconsistent pieces of evidence, along with the FBI's fraudulent manufacturing of the widow's, Lisa Foster's, identification of the gun found with the body. Because they showed her Vince Foster's nickel-plated, silver-colored gun that he'd inherited from his father, but the gun actually found with the body was dark-blued steel, and it had been wiped clean of all fingerprints after being fired. Somehow, I don't think Vince Foster was able to do that himself. But you know, sometimes the cover stories just get really bizarre, and we've got one later on in the show you are not going to believe.
Well, Seth Rich too. That's disappeared from it. Everybody, poo-poos that and makes it a conspiracy theorist. It's absolutely, in my mind, that absolutely was a murder.
Yes, no question.
Maybe that'll come out with this FISA memo stuff once they realize that all this hacking was crap and that he was a leaker. Maybe that'll come out too.
Well, I'd like to see it come on out. All it's going to take is for one or two of these individuals to panic and decide to cut a deal. And it will be a race because the first ones in to make a deal get the best deal, and the ones who wait too long, they get nothing. So hopefully that will happen. Of course, anybody making a deal and offering to turn state's evidence, I'm sure they're aware of the huge pile of dead bodies that have built up around the Clinton web of corruption all these many years.
Mike, did you see where McCabe just was forced to resign?
Yes.
And I missed the first part of your show, but, he was forced to resign after Ray read that FISA memo. Apparently he was named in it. So apparently,
yes. Okay, Peter? Stay on the line.
Yeah.
Going to do some commercials. I'll come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles. We're talking about the FISA memo, what's in it. Was it, in fact, the reason that Andrew McCabe decided to leave his job early? Because originally he announced he was going to stick around until March. And then he was going to retire with a full pension. And I'm hearing from multiple sources, yeah, he was basically told he had to leave. So something is definitely going on. And it's not what was in that 99-page memo that was leaked out a few days ago. I think that was done to just try and blunt the impact of this 4-page memo, because apparently there is some classified information in it, which is about to be declassified. But yeah, we the American people have a right to know if, in point of fact, our government has gone rogue, because we demand that FBI, Department of Justice, CIA, NSA, all of it, that they avoid political bias in the performance of their job. They can be as politically biased as they want on their own time, on their lunch breaks, when they go to the voting booth. But when they're working for the American people, we expect them to be objective and not be turned into political hatchet people. Anything to add, Peter?
Oh, hi, Mike. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got cut off for a second there. No, just that these it's really terrible, and honestly, I don't know how you can avoid, or anybody can avoid, the fact, and it's a fact, that Obama was a tyrannical, despotic dictator. And the stuff that went on under him, from the banks and the bailouts to the wars, to the eviscerating the anti-war movement, to weaponizing the IRS and weaponizing the intelligence agencies, and on and on and on. This guy was historically heinous. So,
yes. Absolutely.
That's it for me, though, Mike. That's all I got.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call here. And before we take another phone call, if you're hearing what sounds like explosions in the distance, there's some kind of a live fire exercise going on down there, either at or just past Pearl Harbor. And we're hearing bursts of what sounds like, medium artillery going on off. Let's see. Apparently the House Intelligence Committee is going into their meeting where they're going to decide whether or not to release that memo. All right, going on back to the phones here. Don in the Philippines, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, yes, on the subject of Andrew McCabe resigning, I looked at a couple different articles about that. It seems that he's leaving, but one of the things I saw said that he's actually going to take leave until his retirement date. So he's not going to lose his retirement. He's just on leave.
So he's trying to game his pension. Okay.
Right.
Well, it still amounts to the same thing. He got shown the door.
Yeah.
Okay. And we got to take a break for station identification. And apparently my video feed to YouTube just disconnected. So I don't know oh, okay, it reconnected. God, everything's just falling apart around here. All right, we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open. 800-313-9443. We got a lot of callers here, and we're going to go back to Don in the Philippines. And Don, take it away. Okay, we lost Don, so let's go on over to Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha to you both.
Thank you.
Night bar and everything. In light of the one caller that called in earlier and said about that Obama was a despondent dictator and so forth, you tell me of one man that has sat in the royal seat of the White House that's not been acting like a dictator or despondent and starting all sorts of stuff. Tell me of one that has.
Oh, Harry Truman.
Well, yeah, maybe. It depends.
Millard Fillmore?
But anyway, that was a bad joke.
Okay.
Now, on the original commentary about the memo that dwindled down to like 4 or 6 pages or whatever, how many pages was it originally?
Well, nobody really knows. They were trying to say that this 99-page memo from last year was simply summarized and distilled down. There really wasn't all that much in there. So we now know that this 4-page memo is based on research that the House Intelligence Committee was conducting on their own. A lot of it is classified information. So whatever is summarized in this 4-page memo, and it could be double-sided, they have the hard evidence to back it all up. And that's why this looks like this is going to be a major scandal.
So basically it came down to about 100 pages altogether. So, well, the reason why I asked because of this. One, I come across an acquaintance, I got into a discussion about this, and their commentary was that they really should go ahead and do the entire revelation of the whole 100 pages plus or whatever to the public for that matter. Reason being is that when it came down to being dwindled down or summarized to the current 4 or 6 pages that it is because those were just simply cherry-picked pages to be decided upon whether they should be released or not, and so forth. So, being that there was 2 sides of the aisle that are affected by it, as well as the various alphabet soup agencies are affected by it, the question is how they're going to get it to affect this party or that party ad nauseum, and basically turning into a 3-ring circus. So the question is, how many different news services out there are talking about this in that fashion or twist turning it every which way but loose?
Well, again, my understanding is that some of this supporting material that was used to write this 4-page memo is in fact classified. And so it's not something that can be released publicly because it would reveal sources and methods, things that probably are best kept under wraps. But apparently everything that is mentioned in the memo, there is actual evidence of. And that's why they're moving forward on that. And apparently whatever's in that memo, there is going to be a special counsel appointed to look into it. So I would imagine we're going to continue to see a lot of resignations and early retirements. People are going to get out of Dodge because there's apparently a new sheriff in town.
There's that too, but you know what? This gives whole new meaning to the word transparency.
Yes.
Whether it is or whether it isn't. Okay, thanks so much, Michael. Y'all have fun. Later.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to switch over to Rich in Virginia Beach. Aloha, Rich. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to apologize for missing hour number one. I'm kind of behind today. Do you happen to know if President Trump agreed to take the Mueller interview or not?
Apparently his lawyers are telling him that would not be a good idea. And I tend to agree because all Mueller has, all that he can do is try and goad Trump into saying something that could be construed as confirming that the firing of James Comey had something to do with the Russian investigation. And I think that if there's no compelling legal reason for Trump to be deposed on this matter, Mueller's just on a fishing expedition. And I think Trump ought to basically say, no, you do your job and show me what evidence that you found that there was collusion going on.
I tend to agree with that. I think that if President Trump does take the opportunity to have an interview with Mueller, I think he should agree to have agreed to a couple conditions first. And I have a couple ideas, and I'm surprised nobody's come up with these. At least I haven't heard them anywhere. But have Mueller agree to televise the interview with all the mainstream media and the independent media. Mm-hmm. And then President Trump, after he's sworn in under oath, also make Mueller swear in under oath, and all 17 of his cohorts that are probably going to be there. And he could really turn this into an event, as he has a way of doing. And I think he should also have them agree that for every question that President Trump gets asked, also have Mueller, have President Trump ask a question of Mueller and all of the 17 cronies right there on live television.
Well, that would be more of a debate rather than a deposition, and Mueller's never going to go for any of that. And like I said, he doesn't really have anything solid. So his strategy, I think, is to try and provoke Donald Trump into losing his temper and then saying something that is going to be actionable. And I don't think Trump ought to take this meeting. If Mueller subpoenas him, Trump's going to have to go. But I think it's a bad idea because Mueller's going to try and trick him into saying something.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there for tempers to flare and things to get out of hand. But I do have one word for President Trump on this, and that's engage.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Mike, for taking my call.
All right. Thanks an awful lot, Rich. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are now open. Pardon me. And we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Now, before the calls, we've been talking about how it looks like it looks like there's going to be a trade war with China. And apparently it's not just with China. Apparently Donald Trump is out there accusing the European Union of being very unfair on trade with the U.S. And he says the problems could become very big. So all of a sudden we're talking trade war with China, trade war with the European Union. And basically saying that, Brussels is not allowing American products into their countries. One that I know they're not, and I agree with that, of course, is GMO. Now, up in Alaska, they're officially in recession. Right now, 1 out of every 7 people living in Alaska are now on food stamps. And the people of Alaska are not doing well. And it's tough. A lot of those people are turning into Alaskan sourdoughs. They're sour on Alaska and they don't have the dough to leave. Apparently Toys R Us has announced they're closing another 182 stores. And last year, there were 6,403 store closings last year. And the trend is continuing. We're probably going to lose the Toys R Us that's down here. It wasn't the wonderful holiday shopping season everybody said it was going to be. Okay. Texas looks like they're heading into a new oil boom, apparently, as oil prices edge closer to $60 per barrel. The Texas drillers are getting ready to just start increasing production as much as they can. And they're expected to hit a record high in terms of oil output. And the United States, I think, is now exporting more oil than Saudi Arabia. Kind of hard to get your head around on that one. Story from Investment Watch blog. You've probably been hearing about all this missing money. Where did it go? Well, $21 trillion is missing from the U.S. government. Nobody has any idea where it went. That's $65,000 for every living American. $65,000 that was taken away and just simply vanished. Now, this article goes on to say that's more than our entire national debt. That is not accurate, because as they fudge the unemployment numbers, they're fudging the debt. They're not including things like unfunded mandates. And the real indebtedness of the United States government is actually quite a bit higher than that. Now, Donald Trump just got back from Davos, but while he was over there was talking to a lot of people, as he was supposed to do. And apparently he took British Prime Minister Theresa May to task, saying that she was going too soft, that she needed a tougher approach towards the Brexit. And basically said, yeah, it's time to get this thing going. The British people voted for this. It's still in limbo. Now, Tony Blair, I thought we were rid of him, but he's back. Phony Tony Blair was also all over Davos, basically saying that France will suffer, that Emmanuel Macron's presidency will suffer if Europe allows Britain to leave the European Union. And Tony Blair, of course, is a Remainer, and apparently he used his time in Davos to encourage European leaders to find some way to block the Brexit. So what are they going to do? Invade the British Isles? Invade England? Because that's what it could come down to. Now, apparently, the EU is concerned that Great Britain is trying to exert undue influence on Brussels. And Mr. Verhofstadt is warning Britain against meddling in EU laws and standards after Brexit. I can't imagine that Great Britain would be all that concerned, but we know that countries like to change other countries' laws if they get in the way of commerce. Okay. Now, as you know, Donald Trump has offered a new immigration policy which will place tighter restrictions on legal immigration, $25 billion for border security to halt the illegal immigrant problems, and I hope some of that money is going to be used to go on out and hunt down these illegal immigrants and ship them over the wall. But he's also opening the door for 1.8 million Dreamers, or DACA, to become citizens. And this is a really large number. It's 6 times more than Obama himself was pushing for. And of course, the Democrats still aren't happy. Mostly it's because it's Donald Trump's idea instead of being their idea. And Dianne Feinstein is out there saying, no, it's got to be everybody. We want amnesty for everybody. And apparently Democrats are saying, no, we need to have a lot more of these people granted amnesty. Now, as you know, we're coming up here on Donald Trump's first State of the Union speech, and he has done something that has the liberals just screaming. And apparently Trump has invited Evelyn Rodriguez. She's the mother of a 16-year-old girl savagely beaten to death by MS-13 gang members. She will be attending the State of the Union address, which tells us that Trump is going to be spending a lot of time talking about the immigration issue and how this open border idea is just not working on out. So apparently Kayla Cuevas was one of 2 girls attacked by members of the gang in 2016, being beaten numerous times with baseball bats and a machete. And Rodriguez met with President Trump in July of last year to address the growing wave of gang violence that was allowed to propagate under former President Barack Obama. And right now the Democratic Party, they've gone insane. Their new position is that it's immoral to restrict any kind of immigration from any country in any amount for any reason. They're back to wide open borders. By the way, we found this really cool video of Dianne Feinstein back in 1994 talking about the problem of illegal immigration and how much it was costing California. Boy, how her tune has changed. We're going to take a phone call now. Frank in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, this will just take a second. Whenever you say Great Britain, it's much more fitting, I think, and another RBN host started this, I think. You substitute ungreat Britain whenever you have to say Great Britain. It's more accurate, and it's also amusing.
Okay.
That'd be really cool if you do that. Ungreat Britain. Ungreat Britain.
All right. Well, I'll take it under advisement.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the immigration issue, apparently up in Washington State, they're changing the requirements for driver's licenses, and they are removing the requirement that you have to identify your place of birth. And apparently that data field is being stripped out of Washington State's system for tracking driver's licenses, and this is being done specifically so that Immigration and Customs Enforcement can't use that database to identify people who should not be here. And whoever in the Washington State Department of Licensing who's done this, that is a Title VIII violation. Okay, we're going to take another phone call from Don in Indiana. Aloha, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, this is Tom. This is not my original idea. I heard this, and I thought it was such a good idea that I would share it with you because you have a vast audience that goes all around the place, and a lot of the people in Washington listen to you. Somebody came up with the idea that all these Democrats that say they're not going to go to the State of the Union address, that Donald Trump gets veterans to sit in their seats, okay? And
yes,
when he goes through his speech and he talks about he wants to recognize Joe Dokes here, who's sitting in the spot of whoever it was, a Democrat,
and have them stand up and have everybody kind of applaud or whatever it is, have these people stand up and they're sitting in the seat for this republic or this representative or that representative, and just like if there was like 13 or 14 of the Democrats that weren't there and they had 13 or 14 veterans that were there that Trump actually called out their names and the Republicans would just go ape. They'd be clapping and stuff for these veterans out there, and and what would the Democrats do? The Democrats would just stand there with their hands in their laps, or would they clap for the veterans too? I just thought it was a great idea, and it would be really good if he could pull it off. But, where I'm at, not too many people hear these ideas, but, you have a bigger web that somebody's probably listening and probably could capitalize on this idea. It's not my idea, though.
I think it's a
I want
good
to
one.
tell you that.
I think it's a good one. And, but as rancorous as the situation on Capitol Hill is, the inter-party rivalry, I would not be surprised at anything the Democrats do at this point. I mean, they're literally throwing a tantrum for all of the country to see.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Have a good day, Mike. Aloha.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And Aloha America, welcome back to the show here. And we're still trying to get this video thing going on. And apparently some people are saying, how do you see it on an Apple device? Well, the same as you would see it anywhere else. You open up a web browser and you go to whatreallyhappened.com. And you make sure that your cache is emptied and you reload the page fresh. And right up at the top, in big letters, it says Studio Webcam, and it says you can watch the live stream at this link. And you click that link, it goes over to YouTube, and you are able to watch the live stream, which apparently there's a lot of buffering again today, so I'm going to have to reduce the resolution. And that's how you can watch it. YouTube changed the rules. I'm not allowed to have an embedded player at my web page. I have to send everybody over to YouTube itself. But we're already looking at a different system, and probably we may put it in as soon as this weekend. And as I explained to you the other day, it's a one-man show here. Anything that's technical, I'm it. I'm all we've got here. Okay, so now let's see. I think our next call is, are we still talking with Don? No, okay. We're going to Rob in Illinois. Aloha, Rob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I don't think you have Rob, Mike.
Who have I got?
You've got Al.
I've got Al in Canada. Okay.
Yes.
Looks like
Mike,
I'm not the only one with tech problems.
Costs your country?
Yeah, it's cost a huge amount. I mean, we did that article last week.
Do you know the
numbers? Yeah, it's billions.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the
billions.
billions.
You know what it cost Canada? There was a write-up on Forbes a few months ago, and it was $23 billion a year.
Yep.
That was on
drain.
Forbes. So, yeah, I mean, you know what? Your country's 10 times as big. Do the math. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
A few billion here, a few billion
crazy.
there. Now we're talking serious cash, Mike.
Yeah, we are. But again, the Democrats have said they want all these illegal immigrants to vote Democratic, even though they're not legally entitled to vote, so that they can grab the Congress this November and impeach Donald Trump and go back to building their liberal utopia.
What is wrong with these people? Like, don't they understand? Don't they understand a simple thing called logic? They're
politicians.
They're bankrupting. Well, the country's already bankrupt, right?
Yes.
But still, I mean, it's bad enough that the bankers took over in 1933, and they made a huge move against everybody in the world in the early 70s, and they've almost got it all. They almost have everything. But
yes.
Now they want what? Now they want all these open borders. They want their one world government. They want their private central bank issuing SDRs or whatever the hell they want to call this crapola that they just create out of thin air. I mean, like, these people are traitors. They are traitors to the country that they're living in. I don't understand it.
Well, they see themselves as being above the idea of nation states. It's the whole point of the one world government, the new world order. No more countries, no more borders, just everybody working together and making the rulers rich.
Yeah. So actually, I'm gonna look around on this. I have a feeling that in the United States, your immigration costs are a lot higher than $230 billion. I bet you they're approaching $500 billion a year. And, you know, we know that, what's the real debt in the United States? I mean, all the levels of government, what is the real debt? No one really
We're not really
knows,
sure.
Because
We're not really sure. I mean, they're hiding those numbers. The way they're rigging the stock market, the way they lie about unemployment. They're lying about the rate of inflation. And it's basically one long cook the books fantasy world out there.
Yep. What do you think the United States money supply is at?
Well, they actually stopped reporting that several years ago. It was called the M3 aggregate, and it was basically a number about how much cash is in circulation. But they stopped reporting that, and that was a red warning sign that we were headed into a period of inflation. They're going to try and hide it with various cash sinks. But again, everything that we're getting about the economy from the U.S. government and the corporate media, it's a work of fiction. It's absolutely a work of fiction. And we don't really know how bad it is or how much longer they can keep up the pretense.
I read somewhere a couple of hours ago that the U.S. money supply is at around 83 trillion. No, that can't be. No. That's bigger than the world economy. You know what? I'm sorry, I can't remember what the number was, but I bet you that's pretty much what the United States public debt is at. It only makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Anyways, thanks for your time, Mike. You got a commercial. I'll let you go so you can take other calls. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the telephones. Rob in Illinois. Aloha, Rob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hello, Mr. One Man Show. How's it going?
It's going.
All right. Good. I'm glad to hear you survived all that Hawaii havoc with the missiles and whatnot. You did hear that, the reporting that you did hear that the reporting that there were actual missiles fired off, right? You've been hearing this stuff, yeah? I've
been hearing it. This island being the way that it is, if that had really happened, everybody'd be talking about it. I think somebody threw that out there to just be funny and try and keep the issue muddy. What, the last thing I heard though is the FCC is complaining that the guy who actually sent out the alert is refusing to cooperate with their investigation. And you have to wonder what's going on, because if it's just, I picked the wrong pull-down menu on the computer screen, that's basically it. And they've already said he's not going to lose his job. He's going to be reassigned. And that user interface is going to get, recoded. But, I think it was actually a test to see how we were all going to react to this message. And that's because they had another so-called accident, alert in Japan two days later.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it. There was that floating around, the world's aspect of it, what would people do and how would they react, so on. But, as imperfect as Robert David Steele is, he's in belief of this, and they report that, not one man can do this. They basically have the as we all saw in the movie War Games, there's two keys, X number of feet apart, takes two people to turn these keys in order to let it happen. That's the theory. Whatever. That's not what I actually called about, but I don't know. Follow up on it. You can see what you can find. According to your last Canadian caller, he was intrigued with the immigration stuff. Can I give a couple websites here? We have one. It's called AliPac, ALIPAC.com, and they're really hard hitting, trying to fight the illegal immigration, fighting against amnesty. They've been doing this a long time. Anyone can get their newsletter and join however they want, and follow up and find out how they can also. They put up call to action, call the White House, call your representatives, call, and so on and so forth. Then you also have numbers. Like, did I say .com? It's alipac.us. I apologize. ALIPAC.
Yes, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, and then you have Numbers USA, numbers, plural, USA.com, and they're famous for that gumball video where they take immigration.
I remember that
and
one.
Use the gumballs. They have currently about 7 million members. They can use 40 million members. So join that website or check them out. Join if you can, and then again follow all the call to action. Also, and RBN publicizes this website as well. It's newswithviews.com, newswithviews.com, and in there you're going to find a gentleman called Frosty Woldridge. Frosty Woldridge is a very poignant. He's in on this immigration stuff. He's been following for many years. He's very outspoken. He's got the numbers down pat. How much it's going to cost us now, in the future, how many people are going to come in, what it means for all this other stuff. And Frosty Woldridge, this guy is, if you could ever hear a conversation with him, it'll blow your mind and it'll scare you half to death because it's insane. Open borders and so on. And this comes from me, out of my mouth. This is me. Open borders means more slaves for them. It means more chaos. It means more opportunity for people to disappear, the organ harvesting, and so on and so forth. Because that's all these wars have ever caused. It caused all these refugees and children and people are disappearing all over the world by the millions. And what they do is they, turn them into body parts and so on. They're making money off all this. And that's what they want to do here in the United States. They want to create the chaos, let the open border. And once we're open border, all the chaos that goes with, bringing down wages and so on. And then people disappearing as they do mysteriously. So that's in with all that. Again, follow up on those websites. Don't take my word for any of this. I just try to repeat what I've heard before.
Well, I've just linked both of those websites to the front of whatreallyhappened.com, and I had seen them both before, but it is a major headache. And what is very angering for me is that on my mother's side of the family, we've been here since before it was a country. Generation after generation after generation. We, the people, built this country, and the Democrats are literally carving it up and bartering pieces of it away for guaranteed Democratic votes. They don't own this. It isn't theirs to give away. And I think it would qualify definitely as usurpation of the people's rights. Anyway, thank you very much for the information. We're going to let you go, and we're going to... Can
I leave you with a tidbit here?
I'm sorry?
One of your favorite subjects, the Clintons.
Yes.
Last night I was listening to Dave Hodges, the Common Sense Show. I'm sure you heard of him.
Oh, yes.
He had an interview with Kathy Rubio, which she's been around for quite a while. I'm not too familiar with her, but she is very key in on all this stuff, deep state, world affairs, local, you name it. And she was talking about, they referenced Cody Snodgrass. Now, you heard the Cody Snodgrass interview that's going around, correct?
Yes.
The Black Ops, whatever. Anyway, she refers to something that Cody doesn't really talk about. That back with the Oklahoma City bombing, back in those days there were 6 witnesses out there. You'll have to listen to the interview. This was last night. But she says there were six witnesses to Clinton murders and so on. Some people that have been connected, they knew they were going to blow the whistle, and they were all out of country. Now, 3 of these witnesses ended up at Oklahoma City. Now, along with all the paperwork that the Clintons, Whitewater paperwork, all the Gulf War syndrome paperwork, everything was in Oklahoma City. But also, these 3 witnesses, 3 of the witnesses turned up there that were going to testify, and they ended up on the same floor as the school kids, the preschoolers and whatnot. And anyway, they all died at that bombing. Then the second 3 witnesses were on Flight 800 that got taken down, where there was 200-plus passengers on there. So they were going after Clintons way back when. They would have gotten them then.
Well, hang on. I have to interrupt at this point. I know about how the former Clinton bodyguards were somehow reassigned to Waco and they were killed there. TWA 800, I don't think that was deliberately shot down. I think it was a tragic, horrible accident, because they were testing this live fire anti-missile system and the radar locked onto the wrong target. So I disagree with the idea that TWA 800 was deliberately brought down just to get 3 people on board. There are much more efficient, cost-effective ways of getting rid of people.
Well, those are Kathy Rubio's words, and I encourage you to check it out. Dave Hodges has got his archives on YouTube and whatnot. So I'll just leave it at that, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And I think Frank in Pennsylvania is our next caller. Aloha, Frank. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Comments and remarks. We keep on going back to the private central bank, Federal Reserve. And if you think about what the Federal Reserve does and why it's so abhorrent to the population, it really creates the trinity of hell. And what I mean by the trinity of hell, it creates devaluation, inflation, and usury. And the population that it's supposed to serve never seems to get out of debt. We're constantly in debt because the system is so corrupted, it just enriches itself and the people at the top. Now, if you look at the Federal Reserve Bank and the way it was started, really under suspicious circumstances, and how they pulled us off an honest money supply, which was the gold and silver coins, and then eventually, and now we're down to digital currency, which is even more corruptible. And you think about how many hours it takes to work just to pay back the debt. We are all debt slaves, basically. And the system, so many people are so naive that if you really want honest government, you got to have an honest money system. Without an honest money system, everything else beneath it becomes corrupted. We could talk about the Clintons and the Bushes and the Trumps, but it's because they're all underneath this arching, corrupt, dishonest system known as private central banking, and it's hurting every single person that lives underneath it. This umbrella really shades people's... You know how many brilliant people are out there, have wonderful ideas to produce things, but they can't get the capital because they just don't have the right connections? It's so shameful what goes on in this country. If we spent one day, Michael, talking about an honest money system, nationwide debate, I guarantee you, at the top of the things to be removed will be the Federal Reserve, and put it back under the Treasury, and at least zero interest, Treasury dollars. That would at least bring us back to some type of accountability on how our money gets spent.
I agree. I absolutely agree with you. That's what Kennedy tried to do with his Executive Order 11110. It's what Lincoln tried to do with his greenback. They all understood that as long as bankers were allowed to just print up banknotes out of thin air and then loan them out at interest, the real wealth of the country was going to wind up in the pockets of those bankers. And it is a scam. Private central banking does not exist to serve the community or the nation or its people. It exists to serve itself. And the trap of all private central banking is it doesn't matter how hard you work, you can never pay the debt off, because there's always more debt than money with which to pay that debt because of that constantly compounding interest.
Absolutely. And compounded interest, which is usury, inflation, devaluation, it creates artificial bubbles. It wipes out people's accounts. It destroys pension funds. It destroys everything it touches because it's so corrupted and so dishonest. And you're right. I really wish that book that you wrote, All Wars Are Banker Wars, this was in every single school district throughout this country, and at least wake these young people up, because my generation failed, I think. We really, really failed, my generation, the baby boom generation. But the younger generation should at least have some knowledge of, don't go down this road of private central bank, and resist it, because it's the true tyranny of this country. It really is.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Okay, well,
very good,
let's
Michael.
see.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Charlie in Los Angeles. Thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind today?
Well, today I want to talk about a couple of things quickly. Number one, Windows asks you 3 times if you want to format your hard drive. So I don't think it's a drop-down menu, and the guy just hit it and off went the whistle. And but that doesn't make any difference anyways. But one thing I want to talk about immigration, Mike. is immigration isn't going on to get more Democrat voters. It's to get rid of the white male. The white male is the biggest problem to the establishment, because if you get rid of the white male, you don't got to do gun control. You don't got to worry about getting the blacks off welfare, because it's only white males who care about that kind of thing. There's a long list of stuff that if you dilute the white male to a manageable number, you don't have to attack these problems, because women, the Mexicans, the blacks, the Chinese, they don't care if they've got guns. They don't care. But it's guys like me who understand the system. Once they get rid of us, they can steal the money right out of your bank account. And that's what's going on. And I want to thank you for taking my call.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we're going to let you go and switch over to Mateus in Canada. Aloha, Mateus. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Michael, do you mind if I talk about vaccines?
Sure.
Okay, I was inspired for this topic listening to a show a couple of days ago. I got into activism for the first time on any issue in 2008, 2009 H1N1 swine flu season in Canada. And what happened was that in Austria, there was a microbiologist who was finished all her work for the day, did some extra work she wasn't scheduled for, and found out that a shipment of GlaxoSmithKline H1N1 vaccines that were about to be distributed to 5 EU countries all had unattenuated H1N1, meaning fully active,
yes,
full strength. So they had to destroy this entire shipment. And then the German army, all these events happened at the same time. At the same time, the German army refused to take their vaccines. And so they donated them lovingly to brown people in Africa. They can take them. And then the German population said, if the German army's not taking it, we're not taking it. So they had to donate all of their vaccines the same way, which were already bought and paid for, shipped and delivered. And then, by the way, in Canada, the health minister said 100% of the population should be vaccinated, which includes everybody who almost died from it in the past, pregnant women, people who are too young. So there's obviously something wrong with that. And then in the EU, I forget which country, there was a release of H1N1 on the subway station, and the excuse was that the suitcase accidentally broke open. Well, it's totally illegal to transport this on a public subway, obviously, and nobody's buying the story that it broke open. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court in Austria, that there was an accusation against GlaxoSmithKline for conspiracy to commit mass murder and commit crimes against humanity with intentionally distributing live unattenuated H1N1. And so what was really going on is that there was a plot, a conspiracy to artificially induce a global pandemic, delivering it through the vaccines, and the answer, the justification, or the end game was then to coerce all the populations of the world and all the governments of the world to mandate forced vaccination campaigns. That's where this was trying to go. It was just this
yes.
horrible, like unbelievably evil plot to wage a biological war against humanity. And what happened is, like, the best laid plans of mice and men is that the H1N1 accidentally became less potent by itself. And it kind of just killed the whole game. And it almost feels like an intervention.
I don't think the agenda was to create a pandemic, especially using a pathogen with high secondary communicability, because that can spin out of control. They just didn't want to take the loss. They didn't want to have to write down all the cost of that lost product. Remember when Bayer was putting out this blood clotting medicine for hemophiliacs, and this had been part of this whole blood harvesting scandal in Arkansas, where they were the blood that they were collecting from prisoners was tainted with AIDS. And so this hemophiliac medication also contained the AIDS virus, which meant they couldn't sell it here in the United States. So Bayer shipped it over to countries where there wasn't a law saying you can't sell medicines tainted with the AIDS virus, and they sold it out the door to make their money back, and a lot of people came down with AIDS. It's all about the money. That's the motivation there. Making as much money as they can. Okay, we're going to have to take
Can you hold me over for a different topic?
Yeah, okay. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right back to Mateus in Canada. You had one more thing that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that's right. Really quick, I just forgot the last thing is that the mercury in the vaccines is being used as a preservative, like you said, but there's thousands of other things that could be used as a preservative that are not also going to be the second most toxic thing to a human brain, second only to radiation damage. Everyone who took that H1N1 shot in Canada for the rest of their life is twice as likely to get this regular seasonal flu, until Harvard released a study last year that said, oh, actually, it's not just Canada, it's everybody. Okay, so my other topic is just really quick. So I live in a 4,000-unit condo complex, and the general manager, the new general manager's name is Jihad. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I wonder how it's spelled. It's probably a different spelling. No, that's how it's spelled. And I look up, okay, I must be making a mistake. I look up his definition. Yeah, okay, it's like a holy war obligated through religious. Okay, it's like that would be like me going to Egypt and getting a job, general manager of 4,000 residential units, and they're like, oh, what's your name? Oh, my name is Crusader. It's like,
yeah,
is it just me or is this unacceptable?
Well, a name is just a name here, depending upon where you're standing, it may seem to be in poor taste.
Canada and the British properties, it's a lot of white Christian people. It's like me. In the States, you guys had a court case where there was a family that wanted to name their child Jihad, and quite rightly, that went through the courts because there is some very legitimate arguments against that. Anyway, that's just ridiculous.
Yes, it is.
So,
it absolutely is.
Have a good show, Michael. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I want to get over here now to Robert in New Jersey. Robert, thank you for waiting so very patiently through all these calls. What's on your mind today?
Hello, Mike. Okay, I just wanted to let you know. I heard the last caller about about Snodgrass.
Yes.
Don't know the name of the people that he said on Flight 800, but I know when Flight 800 went down, I took an interest because one of the flight attendants on it went to school with my second oldest boy. That was her first international flight. But I always am pretty suspicious, like who else was on the plane? And there are 3 unknown people to this day still on that flight, on the flight manifest. If you look it up, you'll find still 3 people, there's no name. And I thought, that's kind of strange. Even it happened before 9/11 and 2001, you still had the names of the passengers on the aircraft. But be that as it may, the other thing I wanted to mention, I'm not sure if he was talking about the same instance, but I used to have an internet show on a defunct radio station back in 2009, and we interviewed a woman from Austria who was the one that covered the contamination of the influenza vaccine with the avian flu. And it was found they made 72 kilos. Now, that was my business, calling on the people that were researchers and manufacturers. So knowing the GMP, the good manufacturing practices, a mistake like this...
Robert, going to have to put you on hold. Got to do station identification. Don't hang up. We'll come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go back to Robert in New Jersey. And Robert, you were starting to talk about more about the vaccines.
The vaccine. I used to work with a fellow who was a tissue culture expert. He does consulting work for pharmaceuticals. And I sold both bioreactors at one time and other systems such as what they call cell factories, which are disposable. And you have to know the good manufacturing practices that have to go into it. And one of the selling techniques of the cell factory was it's disposable. You don't then have to go through a 4-hour sterilization process and then testing the reactor to make sure that the pathogen that was in it, where you're making your vaccine, is totally pure. You just throw this thing out. But these were probably made with bioreactors. But even then, the bioreactor is supposed to go through a sterilization process. Now, it is possible, even the tissue culture expert felt that it is possible that they may have not processed it properly, but he thinks it's very suspicious that it was the flu vaccine and then the avian flu, and together they could do what they call recombination, which would have made possibly made the avian flu into a passing human to human, because it's not currently passed human to human. But it was detected in either a Czech lab or a Slovakian lab, and they injected the samples into ferrets, and the ferrets all were dead in 24 hours. So that's what stopped it. So fortunately, it was held up. But that's all I have to say, Mike. Keep up the good work, and I hope your wife is getting better.
Yes, she is. She is very much so. Thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to switch over to Steve Elkins. Steve, welcome back to the show. What's on your mind today?
Well, I just wanted to tell you that I was listening to a couple talk radio shows today, and somebody called in with a very funny bumper sticker. They'd actually seen a young black woman was in a coffee shop with her computer and had stickers on her computer on the face side of it, and one of them had said, of course, Black Lives Matter. And it also, aside of that, it said, white silence is violence. And so he called that, and he actually took a picture of it. It's on the net now. You can see that. But just the insanity of this, white silence is violence. They're still trying to kick this whole division thing up between the races, and they're still kicking that thing. They're still kicking it.
Biden conquer.
Yep. Hey, I do want to correct something I said to you a couple days ago. I think I got caught up in something. I didn't do my homework enough, and I want to clarify it and basically make amends to what I said earlier. But I had seen it on the internet. I guess I did not follow up with it. But I bought into this whole how much the Russian collusion investigation cost American taxpayers, and I was way off the mark. But I did find it, and I think I bought into it only because I started thinking of stories about the Pentagon losing $4 trillion when I was in the Air Force, and I remember how much those toilets each really cost and how much the hardware we ordered actually cost. So I think I bought into that, and it didn't do enough research to actually clarify it. But it actually was disinformation out there that the investigation has not gone to $250 million for the Russian collusion. It's more, they spent like $7 million in the first 5 months. I think they're at around 10 to 10.5 million right now is what I understand. So I just wanted to clarify that for some credibility in the future to say I ran with something, I made a mistake, and I just want to clarify that.
Well, thank you for the clarification. And yeah, there are a lot of people out there just trying to throw as much junk and goofy, kooky stuff onto the independent media as they can in an attempt to wreck our credibility in the fond hope that it will lure the audience back to the TV news networks. Hasn't worked so far. In fact, their audience...
I later on look at the number and I say, Mike, as much thieving as there is going on in our government, I guess I bought it as possible because, well, there is a lot of money missing. And nobody seems to want to know where it went, especially that $4 trillion from the Pentagon. And I think there was, $2 to $3 trillion when Donald Rumsfeld was in the administration. Yes. So I kind of bought it, and I did see it in print, but I have yet to see it back again in the print. So somebody probably put that out as a disinformation. So independent media would grab it and, bring it out there, and it's a fake story. It's fake.
Yes, it is. All right.
Sorry about
Anything
that.
else,
Okay.
Steve?
No, that's it. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And the phone lines are now open. So, very interesting things happening in the corporate media. I'm sure we all remember Ben Swan. And apparently, he got himself a new gig down at CBS Atlanta. And he did an announcement that his very famous reality check segment was going to be coming back to the air. And apparently, CBS Atlanta decided they didn't want them. And he was suspended as of Friday. So, I guess the deal was that he accept a certain degree of control over what he puts on his program. Now, apparently Massachusetts, as of yesterday, has officially banned bump stocks. Now, these are stocks that mount your AR-15 on a spring mount so that it can actually, the whole rifle goes back when the shot fires. And just by holding your finger still, it'll cause the rifle to cycle very rapidly. Now, originally bump stocks were created to help people who had lost some fingers go on out and do some sport shooting. But because bump stocks were supposedly used in the Las Vegas shooting, there's now a big move to ban these since the mass shooting in Las Vegas. Now, do you remember Lavoy Finicum? This was one of the Oregon refuge occupiers, and he was basically gunned down. And the indications are he was deliberately targeted and killed with a sniper. And of course, the police always say, oh, it's within policy, it's acceptable, it was fully justified. But his family is going to go ahead and sue the federal government anyway for $70 million. But if you look at some of the things that have been going on by these federal land grabbers, and remember, the enclave clause of the Constitution prohibits the government from owning land other than that which is underneath federal government buildings, military bases, and federal infrastructure like harbors and airports. Now, I mentioned this earlier in the show about just how bizarre the official stories can be. And basically, this relates to the founder of Russia Today, a guy named Lesin, and he was found dead in his hotel room, and the original cause of death was supposed to be a heart attack. And a few months later, the District of Columbia's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the Metropolitan Police Department said that the autopsy had found blunt force injuries of the neck, torso, upper extremities, and lower extremities contributed to Lesin's death. He did not die of a heart attack. That was just the official story that was out there. So now the FBI is, and I'm not kidding you, this is not from The Onion. He's saying the founder of Russia Today beat himself to death in his hotel room. Basically, they're trying to say that he got really, really drunk and he just kept standing up and falling down over and over again until he died. Nobody is that gullible. I mean, the fact that they hid the blunt force injuries at first, yeah, it was another murder made to look like natural causes or a suicide. Now, over in San Francisco, apparently there's a middle-class neighborhood rising on the site of a former nuclear testing facility in San Francisco. And it's apparently part of the retired San Francisco Naval Shipyard. And the Navy has learned that Tetra Tech, a government contractor that was tasked with the cleanup of the radioactive contamination, apparently botched it or simply cheated it. And it's all still radioactive. They're getting ready to put all these 12,000 new homes. So that's going to be delayed many, many, many years. It's a lot to clean up radioactivity. All right, since we were talking about the vaccines, I have a few of my own here. Story coming on out from Investment Watch blog. Vaccine industry in a panic mode as vaccinated children keep dying from the flu all across America. And apparently this is a nasty flu. The dominant strain is the H3N2, and it has a history of causing more hospitalizations and more deaths. So apparently people are getting the flu shot, then they get the flu. Now, the flu shot is estimated to only be 10% effective. But the problem is the people who are coming down with the flu the most seriously, requiring hospitalization, are the ones who had the flu vaccination. Now, if the unvaccinated people were dying like this, and the vaccinated people weren't getting sick, it'd be all over the media. See, the vaccine shot works, but it doesn't. It's basically 10% effective, if at all. And we have seen repeatedly these circumstances where they'll be handing out the mumps shot or the measles shot, and all of a sudden the kids who got vaccinated, they come down with mumps and measles. And then the corporate media will say, oh, there's a pandemic of mumps and measles, get the shot for your kid. So back in 1955, there was an incident called the Cutter incident. And it was the first polio vaccine, and it proved to be defective because the process of inactivating the live polio virus was broken. And within just days of launching this mass vaccination program, reports of paralysis, and they basically had to abandon the program after just a month. And subsequent investigations revealed that the vaccine manufactured by the California-based family firm of Cutter Laboratories had caused 40,000 cases of polio, leaving 200 children with varying degrees of paralysis. 10 died. So we keep seeing these disasters over and over again. The 1976, the swine flu pandemic. And we were all ordered to get a flu shot. It was mandatory. And all of a sudden, the people getting the shot are falling down dead. And in the end, the vaccine killed 50 times as many people as the flu itself did. And they had to cancel that one. And they keep going on, and they keep selling this snake oil is really what it is. Because it makes money. All right, let's talk about computers here. Apparently, Microsoft has released an emergency Windows update to disable Intel's troublesome microcode fix for the Spectre Variant 2 attack. Now, Intel put this out there, and it's causing crashes, it's causing data corruption, data loss. And so, basically, Microsoft came on out and said, we're going to issue a patch that undoes what Intel did. But this just keeps getting worse and worse because apparently some of the machines are still rebooting, crashing, data is being lost. This is a horrendous, horrendous problem. Now, last night, Axios announced, basically published a report and a PowerPoint deck created by a National Security Council staffer outlining the necessity of building a nationalized 5G network to protect against cyber threats. So what the U.S. government wants to do is they're going to nationalize the 5G network in order to basically guard it from what they're saying is Chinese hackers. Now, obviously, a lot of people are concerned this would lead to greater surveillance, saying it's an unwarranted encroachment on free enterprise. Remember how the government messed up Bell Telephone when they forced it to break up? What a headache that was. And both the FCC and CTIA issued statements opposing the idea. FCC Chairman Ajit Pai opposes the idea. Remember, these are politicians. They don't know how to make this stuff work. Remember that politician who said the internet is just like a bunch of tubes? Now here's a little bit of an embarrassment. There is this fitness tracking app, and it's got a built-in GPS, and basically when you go on out and you run around, it will keep track of where you're going. So far, so good. And the company that put it on out, Strava, decided to publish the aggregate maps of last year's people using their product. Now, for an ordinary city, virtually every street that can be run on is lit up with a line. But here's the embarrassment. Apparently, these fitness devices are being used by military people in formerly secret military bases that showed up on the map. I imagine Strata's probably already taken it on down, but that was a little bit of a whoopsie over there. So let's talk about human-caused global warming here. Over on Mount Baker, up in the Pacific Northwest, 133 inches of snow in the past 8 days. And they're basically blaming it on us. There's an atmospheric river from the Hawaiian Islands that has pumped a continuous flow of moisture into the northwest. Well, don't worry about it. If the Weather Channel is correct, we're going to start having thunderstorms here starting on Wednesday, and the atmospheric river will go away. Apparently, North Iran got a massive snow dump. And for those of you who might be laboring under the illusion that Iran is all desert, no, it isn't. They have ski resorts there. There's a big ski community in Iran. So they're all happy. They've got their snow. And apparently it affected 20 provinces in the west and north of Iran. Apparently they had to cut the Mehrabad airport and basically shut it down. That's a lot of snow. But it didn't stop Al Gore from being up there at Davos pushing to, we've got to fight human-caused global warming. The survival of our civilization is at stake here. And say, we've got to translate this into political action, meaning force people to buy carbon credits or force them to pay carbon taxes or force them to live a more austere life so that people like Al Gore can have much bigger houses and not feel guilty about the carbon footprint. But he's still out there pushing this whole thing. And it's a hoax. Climate is always changing. It always has. It always will. And apparently, when Trump was there speaking at Davos, he basically pointed out, right now the polar ice caps are at a record level. And he's right about that as well. Remember when Al Gore said the Arctic would be completely ice-free by the summer of, I think, 2014? It didn't happen. Did not happen. And to top it all off, it looks like there is yet another major winter storm about to hit the East Coast. And it's just interesting to see what's going on out there. So we're going to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Visa memo. Now, from there, it will go to Donald Trump. He's going to have 5 days to review it. He could waive that. We could see this thing as early as tomorrow. The Democrats, needless to say, are out there screaming, this is an attempt to undermine the Trump-Russia collusion investigation, and it's a horrible insult to these fine institutions of the FBI and the Department of Justice. Boy, I have to wonder where these people were when COINTELPRO was going down. Apparently, the FBI is now refusing to release Andrew McCabe's text messages. So we got something to hide there as well. Okay, so we were talking about the next winter storm slamming into the East Coast. A little bit of sad news. Greg Evanson was a former host here on RBN, and he has now passed away. He made an appearance in the documentary movie Revelation, the follow-up film of Behold a Pale Horse. I remember that one. That was a good one. And he hosted a show for a time here on Republic Broadcasting called Heartland USA. And today, apparently, Dennis Perrone, the father of medical marijuana in California, also passed away. We're starting to lose a lot of people here. Now, here's another article talking about how oxygen levels in oceans are dropping dangerously. And it's saying, imagine if every living species in all of North America, including humans, were suffocating and unable to breathe because oxygen levels had suddenly and precipitously dropped. Every leader, from mayors to governors, would panic, and then they'd do something, anything, to deal with the clear and present danger. Well, it does take a long period of time to change how much oxygen there is in the atmosphere or the oceans, unless something changes dramatically. Now, obviously, the global warming people are going to say, well, the oxygen is being burned out of the water by human-caused global warming. But we know that the temperature of the earth and the ocean hasn't changed all that much. The only warming that we're seeing in the ocean is geothermal from undersea active volcanoes and undersea thermal vents. We also know, however, that methane will take the oxygen out of water. We're hearing about all this fracking. It releases methane to bubble up through streams and lakes. And what methane will do when it encounters the free oxygen, it will decompose. And what it will leave in its place is carbon dioxide, which bubbles up into the atmosphere, and another water molecule. And that's why we're seeing all these mass fish die-offs. Now, as far as what we're seeing in the ocean, obviously plant life is the source of oxygen going into the ocean waters. Is the plant life being killed off by Fukushima radiation, by toxic runoff from the shore, from leftover pharmaceuticals? The problem is we need to know what's going on before we go on out and just start knee-jerk reactions. We saw that with human-caused global warming. Oh, humans are warming the planet. It's all carbon dioxide. The science is settled. And then it turned out the science was completely wrong. We need to depoliticize science so it can start acting like science again and actually find out just how serious is the problem, how widespread is it, can it be traced to a single source. There is, unfortunately, a huge amount of methane buried in the floor of the world's oceans. It's called methane hydrate. And it's this, it almost looks like sherbet, the ice cream, the dessert. And it's bright white. And when it does break loose from under the ocean floor, it will literally float up to the top of the ocean. And it's outgassing methane. You could literally set it on fire. It's kind of interesting stuff to deal with. But if any large amounts of it were to be released, yeah, that would be one possible source of oxygen levels declining in the ocean. But let's find out what's really going on. Too much of what passes for science in the media is scare tactics and sensationalism. I was looking at the Science Channel the other night. They're doing shows about flying saucers and crop circles. That's not science. It's just trying to grab an audience by sensationalizing. It's tabloidism. American TV has turned into tabloidism. Okay, we're about ready to take another commercial break here. Our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and I could use a few phone calls to finish out the program today. So, boy, that was a loud thump out there. I'm going to take a look out the window and see if I can figure out what the Navy is doing down there. So, we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And somebody wrote in to remind me that Robert Perry over at Consortium News has also passed away. It's been a kind of bad week. We also had a death in the extended family. So, guess we're all getting older. All right, let's see. Let's start taking some phone calls. Jeff in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, how you doing? I called last Monday about the Federal Reserve. You had mentioned Richard Nixon, and most people would agree Richard Nixon was a crook, I guess. But we must remember this about Richard Nixon, that he was brought down by the deep state. that Nixon said in his memoirs in June of '72. He was on vacation. He heard the plumbers broke in. The next week he comes back with his people and his staff, Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and he finds out Hunt is involved in it. And he, Nixon taped everything, but he said this is a CIA operation, and because it's tied in with the Bay of Pigs. The Bay of Pigs was a code word. Nixon, when he was elected, you got to go back to '63. Nixon was in Dallas. Yes. 2 weeks before that, PepsiCo, one guy there invited him down to Dallas, and apparently he was puzzled about the events of Kennedy's assassination. He was asking the CIA 69, 70 for records about the Bay of Pigs and all this. He wanted to know what went on, and they put a stop to him, and he fell into the trap. He covered it up. He had hush money. But Nixon knew right from the start he had nothing to do with telling the plumbers go into the Watergate and collect all this information, and they were CIA people. Nixon did not know maybe that Hunt was in Dealey Plaza, that Frank Sturgis, who was part of that, was in Dealey Plaza, that some of them Cubans may have been, but they were putting a stop to Nixon. Nixon was brought down by a soft coup. John Kennedy was brought down by a coup d'etat. In '62, they almost brought Charles de Gaulle down. Charles de Gaulle tried to stop Israel from developing an A-bomb. He tried to bring the 400 or 500 French engineers out. Then you had the Colonel Theory over in Algeria. You had 1 million French nationals living in Algeria. Colonel Theory was the guy that headed up the attempted assassination on the day of the Jackal. But French intelligence learned that Permindex was funding him. Permindex was tied in with Clay Shaw in the trial in '69, and you see all the Jewish. Yes, sir. Yes. Okay. I don't know if you're trying to make me pause, but we have had one puppet after another. Johnson committed treason at least 3 times for covering up Kennedy, the USS Liberty, and knowing about Israel stealing nuclear material and hushing it up. That's treasonous acts. Ford was a puppet on the Warren Commission. Carter was at zero. Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, and Obama were nothing but puppets. This country's not run by presidents. It's run by a cartel. And how do we attack? How do we go after the Jewish cartel?
It's not a government. It's a crime spree.
Banking. What?
I said it's not a government. It's a crime spree.
But how do we go after and bring down a cartel without being accused of anti-Semitism and being basically we would be voiceless? We
wait for it to self-destruct like the Soviet Union did. The parallels between what the federal government is doing and what the Soviet Union was doing in the months before it fell apart, I mean, they're definitely there.
Mike, if we wait for that, okay, the Soviet Union broke up. I don't want my country to break up. I want to reform my country. If my country breaks up in your country, it could fall into violence. I don't want that. I want to reform. I want to bring down the banking system. I want to do what John Kennedy did. I want to take the CIA. The CIA is one of the biggest embarrassments this country has ever had of being part of the overthrow of other leaders. That's one thing that the world could say that maybe the Kennedy assassination was just blowback from what we did in a half dozen countries.
Kennedy, there were a lot of reasons people wanted Kennedy killed, and you need to get away from this idea that things like wars and assassinations happen for only one reason. It doesn't work that way. What it is you'll get a group of people or entities who all have their own specific agenda, but their solution to their problems overlaps at starting a war or having the assassination, and that's when it all comes together. And of course, having that many players in there gives them all plausible deniability. Anytime investigators start getting too close to one of the guilty, they'll basically wave a flag over at the other one, say, oh no, it's not Israel, it's the Federal Reserve. It's not the Federal Reserve, it's organized crime. In truth, it was all of them, all of these people who were serving their own particular interests with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Anyway, listen, Jeff, our phone lines are loaded, and I'm going to let you go and get to the rest of these calls for the rest of the show here. Apparently, they're now reporting McCabe stepped down under pressure from FBI Director Christopher Wray. That, I think, is a very positive sign. Let's go to Sherry in Texas. Aloha, Sherry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, regarding this is regarding investments. I've had a rather bad time with a major investment company. I want to say right up front, don't give an investment broker, especially if it's a big company, your password. I think the object is to put services on your kind of like Wells Fargo did, put services on your account that you don't want. If you have a username and a password, that password should never go to anybody. I was told that earlier in the game. Now, I've been with a big investment broker for 25 years, and I've made a nice little dribble of money that's helped me along, but it's getting scary today because in today's climate, when I request a trader, I have to wait 30 minutes and was told I'll have to check with my boss. Now, this is not how it was in the past, and everything changed after what was called a mistake made by the company. Now, I was helped by a service representative, and I was able to make the trade I wanted to make. That the trader was bogus that I got and never gave me the full information. And some things that I have, you can put limit orders on things or stop losses that are very handy. Those things don't always go through anymore. You'll get the wrong representative that can't make the trade. So seniors are affected by this. And they're put on a different track. I won't say what happened that they called a mistake, but all the seniors were put on a different track, and you get a lot of less service now. And I'm still wanting to trade my Silver iShares and buy and sell and stuff. I'm finding that maybe I should think about just making a good profit and getting out. And I'm getting scared that when the time comes when things are up enough, I'll think, well, I'm not going to be greedy. I'm not going to try to beat find the highest price. I'm just going to look for a good profit and just get out. I'm hoping I'll be able to. It's getting kind of scary, and I just wanted to share that because we are definitely, as seniors, put on a different track because we're not as active as we used to be. You know what I mean?
Well, they're taking advantage of the fact that many people, as they get older, they start losing their mental acuity. It's easy to confuse them and to get them to go along with things. This practice, putting these pointless transactions on your account, there's a nickname for it. It's called churning the account. And they do that simply to build up more brokerage fees so they can help themselves to more of your wealth. And you might want to take a look at maybe going with an online brokerage where you're making your own orders, like E-Trade or something. And yes, there's a steep learning curve there, but at least you know when your account is being worked on and how much it's going to cost when it happens.
Yeah. Well, I didn't fall for it because when they wanted my password, and because I'd been with the company so long, I had known. I'd learned a lot about it. And I said, absolutely not. I'm not to give my password to anyone. But when I was trying to get my tax records, you have to get your tax records online now, whether you're online or not. My CPA is going to help me out with that. Thank God I've got one. But I noticed, I said, where am I going to trade in the future if it takes this long to get a broker now? And someone who can actually put through a trade, where do I go? And she gave me this number that I've tried before and been told before, and that's where they wanted me to give my password. So I thought they're still pushing that phone number for those seniors like you say that maybe aren't as experienced or have forgotten or can't remember something. And yeah, I'm prone to that for sure.
Yes.
But I heard that, and yeah, I won't say what the number is, but oh my God, it's like they're still throwing that out there and they're making seniors vulnerable. So just be careful. And I just wanted to share that. I'm writing to the Security Exchange Commission just to kind of document what I've gone through and say I hope when it comes time to sell, I'll be able to sell and get out of the company. And it's a major company. Major, it starts with an F, if that's helpful. It's a major company, and everything's, just upside down for seniors anyway. And by this mistake, quote, that wasn't quite a mistake.
Well, the brokerages are like banks. They want your money in their institution, and they will try and discourage you from cashing out. But ultimately, it is your money, and yes. You have a right to basically get it out and put it someplace safe.
Yeah, well, that's a comforting thought. Thank you, Mike. Okay, I think I do too.
Sherry, goodbye. We're going to let you go and switch over to Chris in St. Petersburg. Chris, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind today?
Well, Michael, you were mentioning last Friday about Michigan being paid $200 per year by Nestle to extract 130 million gallons of the safe drinking water. And so that would make Nestle a criminal against humanity. Kind of the point you were making is that we have a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and water is part of that. But the reason Nestle is a criminal against humanity and those who institute water fluoridation is because they're depriving a civilian population of a needed resource. So that's a war crime and a crime against humanity. And that's
well, they're not depriving the population of the water. They just want to sell it to you at a huge markup.
Well, yes, and so prohibitively high water rates means that you're depriving the civilian population of a needed resource, just as water fluoridation deprives the civilian population of a needed resource, and it's outlawed by the Nuremberg Principles, Hague Conventions, Geneva Conventions, and Helsinki Rules. There's an interesting paper on that entitled Reflections on the Legal Regime of Water During Armed Conflicts, paper to be presented at the 5th Pan-European International Relations Conference, Section 31, Panel 8, The Hague, September 11th, 2004. It's by Mara Tignino. And so if water fluoridation were forced medication, it would be contrary to the Clean Water Act's prohibition against the addition of medicine to the public water supply, and the county commissioners and city council members and others responsible for adding it would be practicing medicine without a license. And it's because it's industrial discharge. It's not pharmaceutical grade, as you can see on the annual water quality analysis for all the municipalities. It's truly forced.
Okay, but Chris, we're running out of time here. Can you get to the point you're trying to make?
Well, yes, that Nestle, the CEO saying that it's not a human right, the chairman, Peter Brabeck, saying we don't have a right to water, also we have a Mosaic Phosphate Mining Company here in Florida who was given a permit to pump 70 million gallons per day from the Florida aquifer by the Southwest Florida Management District. That's on the honor system. I don't know if Mosaic paid anything for that permit. I need to research that. But it's on the honor system where they don't, it's unmonitored by Florida, state of Florida. It's just, Mosaic claims that they're not going to pump more than 70 million gallons per day. As they say, the solution to pollution is dilution. And that's where a lot of the...
Wait a minute. 70 million gallons per day, that doesn't sound right.
Well,
that's a huge...
You can check it out. I know, but you can check it out with the Sierra Club. They acknowledge that as well. It used to be 90 million gallons per day, but I think it was 2004, it went down to 70 million gallons. Not that it matters because it's on the honor system. But, the point is that this industrial waste that's being added in the name of water fluoridation is being diluted. They're diluting the industrial waste.
Okay, Chris, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to let you go. We've got callers waiting, and I want to get to all of them. Next time you call on back, if we could, simplify this down and get to the point you were trying to make here. And I would appreciate that very much. All right, we're going to switch over to Vaughn in Canada. Aloha, Vaughn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. After watching your webpage for the last 17 years and listening to your voice for how long you've ever done your radio show, I'm glad to finally talk to you.
Yeah, it's been about 11 years I've been doing talk radio.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure all your listeners hear this, that the House Intel Committee has voted to release the memo. They voted yes.
That just came on over. I was just putting that up here at the website. So whenever Trump is through reviewing it, it'll be made public. But we pretty much already know what it says in there. Is that Rod Rosenstein and McGabe basically engineered this FISA warrant on the basis of a dossier they knew was the product of the Democratic National Party and the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yeah, but
it's a tremendous abuse of power.
We all know what the memo says and what it's implying. What we all know, the important part is what follows next. How this is going to be an interesting week coming up now because, as you know, the guilty parties, that whoever they may be, is going to have to try and find a way to deflect from this when it finally comes out public. So, they're already talking about having a special counsel. Now that they've voted to make this memo public, the next step is a special counsel to investigate the investigators. I hope that gets approved then, because we definitely need that, because we need the truth to get out there to everybody, the truth as it is, not the way the ideologues want it to be, but as it is.
Well, we're certainly working on getting that done. Vaughn, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a commercial break. We've got one more caller that we're going to come back to in our last segment, so stay tuned. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today here. And before we take this last phone call, I used the opportunity of this last commercial break to go on out and look at the issue of how much water Nestle is pumping out of Michigan. And as I said to that caller, that number was just unrealistically high. Using 9 separate wells, Nestle bottles 4 million gallons of water every day. Not 40 million, 4 million. And they use 9 wells to do that. Actually, it's saying 4.8 million bottles of water. They're not even full gallons. Okay, last call. James in Ohio. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Last week you asked listeners for natural solutions for pain. I'm presuming this was for Claire, and I was going to ask you, would you say this is a problem that is chronic or something that you expect to go away shortly?
Well, it looks like it's going away. Claire's just these last few days is starting to do a lot better. It feels like it's just plain ordinary sciatica now, and I am taking her back to the chiropractor this afternoon. So it looks like we're out of the crisis. It's not going to be a chronic problem, which of course is very, very tough because I've been through that experience before, and it can be very. It can just wear somebody down when they're dealing with chronic back pain. I had a back injury myself that lasted about 3 months, and I basically got it. I was working on a sound stage, and they were doing what's called a master shot, and I tripped over a C-stand, and I aborted the fall, which torqued my back. And I went to the conventional ordinary doctor. I was in a huge amount of pain. They gave me all kinds of medication. They zapped me with electrodes and talked about putting me on permanent disability because of how bad it was. And I really didn't want to do that. Fortunately, there was a chiropractor's office very close to where my office was located. So I just started going on in there. And after about 4 sessions, the back was fixed. And I was able to give up the medication. I'm sorry?
She still has sciatica, though?
Yeah, but that seems to be going away. And we got some Chinese medicine stuff, should be here any day. She's doing a lot better. You know, right now my biggest job is to not let her start acting like it's all better, like it's all over. And yes, and well, she's listening to me in the other room.
If you have a P.O. box or something down there, I have 4 things I was going to send you gratis, and perhaps you can keep them aside as for future use in case something else happens. But
Okay, well, if you want, basically, if you go to the webpage, it says on the little white sub menu, it says donate, and our postal address is in there.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. There's the music. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. He's got lots of interesting things to share with you. I have to go on to Jim Goddard and do his show, and then I got to take Claire to the chiropractor, and that'll basically wrap up my day-to-day. So please share what you're learning here with everyone that you can. Cannot wait to see what is in that FISA memo, but I think we pretty much already figured out what was going on. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.